Today on Soul Work for Moms. What do you do when you get overtaken by emotion? When you get that familiar feeling that you are about to go down that painful path that came out of nowhere? Today's guest spent 2 years tackling her tough emotions, writing them down and peeling back the layers until she got to the bottom of each one. She took her work from that process and turned it into a book for mothers titled A Mother's Manual for Self-Care, an A to Z handbook for moms. Michelle Schrag has lived in Ann Arbor, Michigan for almost 6 years. A Northern Illinois native, she spent the 15 years before that in Chicago. While in Chicago, she got married and grew her family. Her children are currently ages 14, 12, and 9. She also studied to become a licensed spiritual counselor through the Bodhi Spiritual Center in Chicago. And it's during that time that Michelle wrote A Mother's Manual for Self-Care. Music has always been a part of her life as well. She's a singer-songwriter and has been in bands for the past 25 years. She's currently part of a band named Round 2. Hear what Michelle has to say about self-care and motherhood right after this. I'm Michelle Duncan-Wilson, and last year I created a workshop for moms to get together and work through some of the things they were struggling with. The feedback from the workshop was great, but the thing I heard over and over again from the mothers was that they loved hearing all the other women who shared their struggles and strengths in mothering. I wanted to create an outlet for more of that, and the result is this podcast. Join me as I interview a different mother every week. You can listen in as women from all different backgrounds and stages in life share their experiences in motherhood. You'll also hear from expert guests who share their ideas on how to take the hard parts of mothering and use them to grow personally and spiritually. I call it Soul Work for Moms, Evolution Through Mothering. Welcome to the show. You have written a book. It's called A Mother's Manual for Self-Care, an A to Z handbook for moms. What made you decide to write this book?
I would say for me, before having children, I felt like a very peaceful person. I felt like I knew exactly how I wanted to raise my kids, and I was going to be so calm, and I felt like I had all the answers. And then I started having my children, and that calm and that peace that I had, that I thought I had control of all of these emotions, anger and worry and jealousy and fear and all of these things, they all just popped up so big for me. And I felt lost, like I didn't know who I was anymore because I didn't have control over anything. I was feeling all of these emotions that I thought I had control over before I had kids. And so I started right around the time I had my second child. I started taking some classes at a spiritual center in Chicago called the Bodhi Spiritual Center. And through some of that classwork, I found that there's always a reason behind an emotion. And I learned this process of trying to peel back the layers of the emotion to see what is the false belief underneath it. So if I'm feeling extremely angry and I'm reacting, well, there's a reason. There's a deeper reason I'm having that emotion. So what happened was during my classwork is every time I would have an extreme emotion with my children or wherever I was, I would just start journaling and trying to figure out why I was reacting in such a big way. Why was I feeling so triggered? And I was able to come down to the real reason that emotion was coming up almost every single time I journaled. And I did this for a couple of years because I had then had my third child, and I just had this massive amount of writing, and I would find myself going back to it. And I found peace in being able to see, oh, that's right. The reason I'm feeling that way is because of this. And I was able to center myself again and stop judging myself for having those emotions. And I guess after a while, I just realized, well, if this is helping me so much, I wonder if it would help anybody else. So that's kind of where it came from.
And you mentioned in that answer the notion of a false belief So can you give us a specific example of something that has a false belief at the core?
Sure. There's a false belief that that moms are supposed to worry, and that means love. That's just one that I'm thinking off the top of my head. That when I worry about my child, oh, I'm so worried about him. Oh, it means that we love them. And that is, I think all of us have felt like when we're worrying, we're loving our children. And I believe that that's a false belief, because I don't think worrying means that I love my child anymore. It just means that I believe it does. And so when I can get out of that pattern of feeling like if I worry about everything, it shows that I'm loving, then I can actually, instead of worrying, I can use my intuition more clearly. I'll be more clear-headed. I'll be more present with my children, and I'll find actual real ways to show love for my children that doesn't involve them feeling anxious because mom is worried. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally makes sense. And in the book, you write that there are 26 common difficult emotions and situations addressed in the book, and each one has has affirmations at the end. So did these come up organically through things that you were experiencing, these 26 different scenarios?
Yes, I am sure that there are far more than 26 different scenarios. I mean, there is probably an endless supply of different scenarios we as moms could come up with. But that's where I sort of felt like, boy, if I don't stop, I'm never going to publish this book. So I stopped at about 26. But yes, either it was me who experienced the situation, or it was someone very close to me that did. And the affirmations, whenever I wrote an affirmation in the book, it was from kind of a meditative space, like what would make me feel empowered right now instead of so afraid.
So at the beginning, the table of contents, you've got things like desperation, embarrassment, fear. And so the idea is that if a mother is feeling fear, then they can go to the table of contents, turn to page 26, and then read and have these affirmations to help them through that process. Is that right?
It absolutely is. I found that when I would have some of these emotions, like things that I might feel a little bit ashamed of, even the feeling of being ashamed, I wouldn't necessarily want to share that with anybody.
Sure.
It would feel too vulnerable. And so for what I really see for this book is that for me, it sort of becomes like a best friend, because it's going to be a place where I can look it up and I can see, oh, jealousy, or, some of these emotions that we have that we feel a bit of a shame around. We can look at that and get some, positive thoughts and ideas about it without judgment. It's a complete judgment-free zone, and move on from there. Because I feel like when I have those emotions and I bottle them up, that I'm judging myself, which is then making me not like myself, which is then, because I believe that, then that's what I'm perceiving in my life, that I'm not liked, that my kids don't like me, that people don't like me.
Yeah, so it's a symptom that just turns into this disease that just spreads.
It absolutely does.
I'm curious on your take on what can we do when we're using affirmations when we're not yet in the place of believing the affirmation, because there are some really beautiful affirmations in here. I'm just pulling one right now that says, I let go of what is pulling me away from right here and right now. And sometimes we're not believing it when we're saying it. How do you handle that?
Well, that is a huge important point, in that if you're going to say it and you don't believe it, it's not going to sink in. So it's very important to make sure the affirmations that you're saying are things that you believe wholeheartedly. And a way to get into the right mode of saying an affirmation is to take a moment and close your eyes and just imagine something in your past that brought complete joy to you. And what you're trying to do in this moment, it's not necessarily about the memory, it's about the feeling state, the nature of the feeling of joy, is to get into that feeling of joy, into that feeling. It doesn't even have to be that you're loving yourself in that moment, because so many of us struggle with loving ourselves. So it's more that you're feeling joy. And then it's about trying to find the right affirmation that will work for you. Sometimes you may not be in a place to actually believe in affirmation, and that is absolutely fine. What I would suggest, if you're in a place where you're not really able to believe it, is to just state to yourself, I'm right here, right now. I'm not thinking about the past. I'm not thinking about the future. I'm present. I can feel the chair beneath me. I can see the green chair in front of me. I can hear the cars going by. Just bring yourself into presence. And when you can bring yourself into that present moment, usually you can get back into a state of believing, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
so
that's great.
I really feel as if you need, some of us, and I would be absolutely included in that, and it's different every single day, will need to start from scratch, start from absolute scratch, and find an affirmation that you can believe that's going to be positive, even if it's just being present.
Okay, great. In the introduction of your book, you said that you have a passion for helping moms to learn to love and accept themselves. And you touched on this a little bit on why you wrote the book. Was that a theme for yourself? And is that where that compassion comes from towards other mothers?
Absolutely. I feel as if a big lesson in my life has been self-love. I always have had such a negative critic in my head, always telling me that I'm doing things wrong. And I feel like it got amplified when I became a mom. And I just became very judgmental and critical of who I was. And I feel as if, I bought all the parenting books and I read them all, and I had so many, as I think so many of us buy these books thinking those are going to be the answers. And none of them stuck. Nothing that I learned ever stuck, because I would end up feeling as if I was pushed to the end of my rope, whether it was because I didn't get enough sleep or my kids are fighting or whatever, and I would lose it. And I would feel entitled to lose it because they pushed me, quote unquote, and then I would feel terrible.
Yeah.
And what I really learned from that process is that if I could change that critic in my head to an unconditionally loving voice that only knew love for me, even when I was running late, even if I raised my voice, even if my house is a complete mess, even if my kids are fighting and I feel like I'm the worst mom, this voice only knows love and says, I love you even now. You are perfect. I love you even now, Michelle. I love you now. It is life-changing, because then I'm not reacting from this place of judgment, but I'm actually maybe responding from a place of loving myself, so that if I do react or something like that, I'm not going to then beat myself up about it for weeks and weeks and weeks and then let it affect every single day. I'm able to transition to the next day from a place of love again.
Yeah, I really hear that, because we're still human, and no matter how much self-help, self-inquiry, growth that we do, we're still going to have human moments, I think, when we lose it. And so it's really easy to have that critic show up and say, see, you're not really as good as you thought you were. So, that really resonates with me. And you wrote this book while you were getting licensed to be a spiritual counselor. Is that right?
Yes, I was. Yes. I learned the process of everything written in the book through my counseling, through my classes. And I became a licensed spiritual counselor in Chicago, yes.
What is a spiritual counselor?
Well, what it means is, so through the United Centers for Spiritual Living, they have a spiritual license program. The one that I got was through the Bodhi Spiritual Center in Chicago. And you go through I went through a certain number of classes. It was a process. And I learned basically that there is a reason, there is a false belief nearly 100% of the time when I'm reacting in a way that I don't want to be. There's, when people are having situations in their lives that they feel they need help with, spiritual counseling, becoming a licensed spiritual counselor, there's questions and techniques and things like that to help the person find the reason why. What are they believing in their life that's causing them to have this situation occur? And it's not about blame in any way or shape or form. It's more about seeing life as a classroom and realizing that this is in front of me and it's my lesson to learn right now. So to have a spiritual counselor there to sort of help guide you through the process, knowing that there's something in you, something in me that I can shift to maybe have a different experience. That is really what being a spiritual counselor is all about.
And you said that you initially wrote a mother's manual for self-care for yourself. Do you still pull it out and use it yourself?
All the time. I use it all the time. I have one in my bedroom. I have one in my kitchen. I have one in my living room because I need it. And I feel as if my kids, as they're getting older, especially my 14-year-old about to enter high school, the children are getting new personalities and growing and changing. And so then when I think I have it all figured out, I clearly get taught that I don't. And so I'm constantly thinking, and I sort of appreciate that I wrote it when my kids were younger because I think, wow, if I only knew, right? But everything resonates. As my kids have gotten older, the lessons and the guidance in the chapters resonate for my children now. Mm. And I know that they will continue to resonate for their ages to come, because they're kind of just life lessons around our emotions and learning to accept who we are.
Yeah, and as I was flipping through and reading some of the chapters, I was thinking that you can use this in two different ways. You can use it on an as-needed basis, but you also, you could even use this as a month-long practice and just start at the beginning and do one page each day. So I think it's really versatile.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. It was definitely written with moms in mind. We don't necessarily have a lot of time to sit down and read a book.
Right.
So each chapter is only a couple of pages. So if you had one in your purse or in your car, which sometimes, if I'm dropping kids off, I can stop in the parking lot for a minute. If it was a rough morning drop off, and just quickly, get a little fix. And in the back of the book, there are different exercises as well that will help kind of anchor that self-love, that self-care. I have different meditations and exercises to support you when new situations are coming up for you.
I see that, like changing a behavior and prayer for your kids.
Yeah. So, it can be used however works for you. I mean, we are all so different and have different amounts of time. So I would say that it could be read in a matter of 10 seconds if that's all you need, or you could spend some time reading it as well.
Yeah. So you have a blog, and in the title, I was noticing it says, Michelle, a believer in all moms. Can you expand on that? What is it specifically that you believe in mothers?
I believe that we all have exactly what we need to be the right parents for our kids. And that when we go out into the world, we're constantly tested on those beliefs. And we can get pulled into different directions depending on what's in front of us. We can get pulled to maybe think, oh, I'm wrong, I shouldn't believe that way, all these other people believe this, or this family feeds their kids 100% organic, and yet I can only do a little bit. And we can feel pulled, we can feel insecure because we see how everybody else is doing it differently. And what I believe is we all have our own right path. And that my path, even though it's different from someone else's, is absolutely perfect and right for me. And I feel as if we've all probably made excuses and defended or questioned what we're doing. And what I have found is that I really respect parents who tell me why they do what they do, and I feel like, well, then that's what I should do. Mm-hmm. I should, feel passionate and powerful about the way I'm parenting, even though a lot of the time I feel like I'm lost. Mm-hmm. I think everybody feels that way, and that we all have our own right way.
Yeah. Oh, and
I want moms to know that about themselves, that they have their own right way and that they don't need to explain it to anyone.
Because there is no one right way. The one right way is your right way.
Absolutely. If you need to be in bed for 3 days because you're completely stressed out and you feel like you can't handle the family, that is perfect. There's no judgment in that. There's no need to defend that. Mm-hmm. That is what you need. And it can be, it is something that should be nourished and done. And there are so many of us, I feel like we need these breaks or we need a moment and we don't feel like anyone else does. So I guess I just think I would love for us all to really just trust in who we are.
Yeah, absolutely. So we met at a parenting conference in Chicago where you performed a song that you wrote about parenting, and you've got some videos of you singing on your blog as well. And I especially like there's a rewritten version of Justin Bieber's What Do You Mean song. So is music a form of self-care for you?
It absolutely is. And I've always written songs since I was in elementary school, and it's just a part of me that makes me feel alive. A lot of times just sitting at the piano and playing chords and coming up with something that might just be for me is how I feed myself. And there were a couple years in there, in the midst of having young children that I really couldn't put the time into it. But I do feel so grateful to have an outlet that can be mine and for me. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. The Justin Bieber tune that I rewrote, that was all for fun.
It was great. I loved it. So what else does self-care look like for you these days?
Well, washing my face every night. It's these things that I feel as if I never, I wouldn't take the time for myself for little things like that. Making healthier food choices because I know that I'll feel better later if I do that. Getting myself in bed at a decent time. Those, trying to take a walk with a friend. Mm-hmm. Just little things like that are for me. Especially the washing the face every night. I don't know why that was such a big one for me, but it was like I made this decision, you know what? I am going to wash my face every night. Yeah. And it feels like it's just for me. Nobody cares if I do that.
Right. Yeah, I do the same thing, and I look forward to it every night. And I was the same. I used to not, and now I like washing my face, but my even more than that, I like putting on this heavy night cream afterwards.
Yes.
It just feels so luxurious. So
totally. It's those little things, you don't have to do anything big and fancy. It's just, if you could imagine that, like for me, what I did is I imagine, and it can't be my voice, but I imagine a voice that is speaking to me, saying that I'm worthy, saying that I deserve this, saying that I need it. And it's hard to describe how I can make it as if it's a separate voice coming at me, but it's just imagination. And having that voice, tell me I need to take care of myself and I'm worthy and I deserve it, just like I want my children to do someday. It really helps.
Yeah. That differentiation of it not being your voice, I can hear how that really would make a difference.
It really does, because it really feels like someone else is saying that.
And giving you permission.
And giving, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Your children are now, you said 14, 12, and 9, is that right?
Yes.
So how would you say parenting teens and tweens is different from parenting younger children?
Well, what I can tell you right now, in my experience, is there's this jolt of pain that I have with my older kids, because and not every child goes through this, so I am in no way saying this is what anyone else's experience will be. But in my experience, my oldest is just not really around anymore. If I'm in the kitchen, he'll be up in his bedroom. And then if I go upstairs, he'll want to go downstairs. And, just one word answers or grunts. And, and so it's painful, because I experienced, when they were younger, I experienced so much more affection and comfort. I found myself last summer, and I was laughing with a friend, because I found myself feeling as if I was approaching him as if it was like a first date. I was so worried I was going to say it wrong. I was so worried I was going to set him off, or, he wasn't going to like me anymore. So I just, I kind of would walk in his room sort of, tiptoeing like, oh, hey, so how was your day? But it's hard, because in my experience so far, I've noticed big changes in their personality, and rather than taking it personally and thinking it's the way it's going to always be, I'm really just trying to stay present and allow for it to be what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, and pull out that mother's manual too, right?
Exactly.
To find out what the not true thought is or belief.
Exactly. Trusting in myself and trusting in the parenting and just trusting that all is well. That would be my continued affirmation, is just trusting that all is well. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's different. And it's also, it is beautiful knowing that they're growing and this is part of their growth. Although sometimes it feels painful, I think it's exactly what it is supposed to be.
How do you feel that you have grown personally and spiritually from being a mother?
Boy, a great question. I feel as if where I am now is I've really had to learn who I am. As a parent, we're faced with these situations that we could pull from everybody else's advice and then make a decision. And that would be me definitely in the beginning, is I didn't know anything. I just kept going to other people. And when as a parent, I needed to learn and grow and trust that whatever I was feeling deep inside as the answer was going to be right. That's a hard thing to do. It's a very hard, because then I'm responsible.
Right.
So I feel as if I've really, I have to do that all the time. It's not something that I've conquered by any means. I'm constantly in new situations that I've never experienced, and how am I supposed to know what to do?
Right.
So I feel as if we're just continually being drawn to figure out who we are in every moment and to trust that. So for me, that's one big one. Learning how to have healthy boundaries with people in my life. We have different, as a parent, we want to have positive people around us, people who support maybe the same, maybe same types of parenting-ish, but having that positive, optimistic friendship with someone who I can run things by, who I know is going to have my best interest at heart. Finding that is also been a good thing for me to practice.
Boundaries for me has been an area that I've really been forced to grow in.
Yes.
Because I don't think before children I was very good at setting boundaries. I was very much a people pleaser.
Yes.
And I found out very quickly that doesn't work very well as a parent.
Oh my goodness, I can so relate. And when we're people pleasers, we just let everyone in, and then we're the wrong ones if something is wrong. And with having a family, so we have, if you're married or not, whatever, if you have a spouse, they have people in their lives, and then each of your children have their people in their lives. And then we as moms have the people in our lives. And although everyone is, on their own path and living exactly how they're supposed to live, it doesn't necessarily mean they're supposed to be our best friends, right?
That's right.
That's such a hard thing to work for me. I'm working on that on a daily basis myself.
Yeah, me too. Who or what inspires you?
I mean, off the top of my head right now, it's little things that inspire me. If I see a friend who right now is training for a half marathon and she's posting that she got up at 5 a.m. and ran her miles, even though she was exhausted and had so much on her plate, it will inspire me to think, okay, she did it, so I can do it tonight. I'll try to find the time. It's those little things that are inspiring me right now. I don't know if I have any big inspirations, but those little day-to-day moments where a mom might say something to me in the moment about anything. It could be just about a boundary she's created, or exercise, finding the time to exercise. Those are the things that inspire me.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things about social media, is that you can get those hits of inspiration from people that are in your life, but you may have never been privy to those parts of their lives before.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's really beautiful.
And something else about social media that I strongly recommend anyone listening to this. I have, on Facebook anyway, you can have a secret page. So it's basically a page that you invite people to be a part of. And it's just called a secret group, I think, is the way it's titled on Facebook. And what I did several years ago now, gosh, I mean, I don't know how many years it's been since I've had this, is I went through and found different moms throughout the United States that I know, whether I only knew them for a year, but I'm friends with them on Facebook, or maybe a friend of a friend. And so I have all these people who don't know each other, but we all have motherhood in common. And I've invited them into this group, and it's a place to be confidential, to share anything and everything that's happening for you and your family, your mothering, your relationships. And what's wonderful is because it is so anonymous, nobody really knows each other. There's just a few people who know each other simply because they're friends from when I was children, when we were kids, is that we all support each other. And these people have never met in person, but I feel as if we could all come together and just love each other. We've helped each other through so many things. We've helped each other through divorces, miscarriages, children, puberty. And it's just an amazing place for us to have a space to download in a confidential way.
Oh, that's a great tip for building community in a way that you can access without having to leave your home.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's great. So we're going to start wrapping up, but there are 2 questions left that I ask every guest on the show. The first one is, what do you hope your children remember from their childhood?
I hope so much that my children remember me loving them so deeply and affectionately. That would be my biggest hope.
And the last question for you, Michelle, what is one thing that you want all mothers to know?
I would love for all moms to know that they are the absolute perfect person to be the mother of their children, that they do have the answers, that they are enough, that they do have intuition, that they can accomplish anything that they want to accomplish as a mom simply by being who they are.
So many thanks to Michelle for sharing her story of motherhood with us today. If you would like to check out Michelle's book, A Mother's Manual for Self-Care, you can find a link to it in today's show notes at soulworkformoms.com. That's where you'll also find links to Michelle's Facebook page and her blog, and her YouTube page where you can see Michelle's Justin Bieber redo along with many other of Michelle's songs. Don't forget, you also have a free soul worksheet from today's show waiting for you there, where you can do a deeper dive into some of the topics we discussed today. Today's soul work action step is this. This week, listen for the voice of your inner critic, and when you hear her, redirect her to speak to you from a voice of unconditional love. Just like you might direct a child who said something in a harsh tone to say it again in a gentler way, see how many times you can redirect your inner critic's voice to have compassion and total love for who you are. That wraps up today's episode, and next week, you'll be hearing from Jen Truelson, a mind-body coach mentor, who in 2006 made one of the hardest decisions of her life, which was to separate from her husband. She had 3 beautiful children, all in elementary school, and says she had the moment where she realized that she wasn't happy and she wasn't modeling a healthy relationship, marriage, or partnership for her children. But her story does not end how you might think it would, so be sure to listen next week to hear what happened after her separation. And I'll end today the way I end every week, and that is to remind you of how much you matter. Being a mother can be incredibly beautiful and heart-opening, but it can also bring up a ton of pain. And I want to encourage you to keep moving forward, keep doing your soul work, because when you heal your wounds, you heal the wounds of the world. And that is evolution through mothering. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next week.